there is a theme to today's conversation, and I think I'm not going to give away what that theme is. I think as our guest speakers sort of introduce the focus of their work, we'll be able to start pulling that theme out. We want to thank all our guests for being here today. Kicking us off, we have Dr. Darryl Hilton Jr., CEO at Operation Grad, Inc. And he's going to share with us his education philosophy and the work that's taking place right now at Operation Grad. So let's open up the floor to Dr. Darryl Hilton Jr.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Well, I need the ability to share the screen.
All right, so let's get Darryl in there, and Benita's back. Welcome back, Benita. I just introduced Dr. Hilton. I'm not sure if you had anything prepared that you wanted to say beforehand. Right now would be the perfect moment to do that. No? Okay, cool.
No, that's why you're the co-host. You just jump on in and keep it moving.
All right. Sounds good.
Awesome. So I will share my screen and go into presentation mode. Okay, awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Daryl Hilton, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Operation Grad Incorporated. GRAD is an acronym that stands for Grit, Resilience, Ambition, and Drive. And so first and foremost, I want to say thank you all for allowing me to join this space to be able to share a little bit more about the work that I do and how I help to impact and transform lives of African-American males pursuing college degrees. And so again, I appreciate this space, and I'm thankful for that. Just a little bit about myself and who I am, how I got into the field of education. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and I earned all of my degrees in some form or field of education. And the reason why I chose education was because throughout my entire life and all the inconsistencies or the moving from place to place and the separation and divorce of my parents, it was just a lot happening as a child and just kind of growing up. But one thing remained consistent and constant, and that was education. I knew every day when I woke up and I went to school that there was going to be a building there to welcome me, to feed me. There were going to be individuals there who really looked out and cared for my best interests. And so I wanted to be able to dedicate myself back to a field to be that individual for others who are looking for the security that education provides. And so that's one of the reasons of how this organization came about. The mission of Operation Grad is to increase the persistence and graduation rates of collegiate African-American males through mentoring. And our vision is we want to be the leading organization in helping African-American males pursue a college degree. And rooted in our core values of commitment, community, diversity, education, and integrity, we truly strive to challenge and support students to plan to execute the goals that they set to achieve. And so the other half of how this organization got started was, it was a part of my doctoral research where I looked at specifically the impact of mentoring on the persistence of African-American males pursuing a college degree at a predominantly white institution. And so as a part of that data, I found the research from the National Center for Education Statistics, which showed that African-American males graduate at a disproportionate rate as compared to other racial and gender demographics, as you see on the chart before you. And so as a result, my co-founder and I were like, hey, we have to do something about this to not only make an impact, but to truly change this narrative and this data. And so we came together and we said, hey, let's develop an effective mentoring model to make this change. And so we fulfill our mission and vision through this model, which includes developing meaningful relationships with school partners, recruiting motivated students, mentoring students to become leaders on their respective campuses and beyond. And then last but not least, monitoring student retention, persistence, and graduation rates. And we do all of this through our 5-step approach to mentoring, which is also known as our PLEASE model: professional mentoring, leadership development, engagement, academics, and service, with the intention to bring multiple communities and identities of Black men together and support them throughout their entire collegiate experience as they work towards success. And so this right here, in addition to all of the great things that we are planning to do and that we are doing within the organization, one of those awesome things is our publication, which is called The Educated Mentor. And this publication is designed to highlight the things that are going on within the Operation Grad community and keeping our community members abreast of the new information while simultaneously highlighting Black excellence or Black male excellence. And so these are the first 3 issues of the publication that we have out, going from left to right, which is our first one, second, and third. So we actually just released quarter 3, which is our winter 2020 edition, on New Year's Day, January 1st. And so I will also throw out there for anyone listening, anyone that may be watching this recording later, we are always looking for individuals to collaborate with us and to submit articles for publication. So if anyone is interested in learning more about our publication or submitting an article to the Educated Mentor, we are definitely open to receive that information and to speak more with you about it. And so overall, right, we at Operation Grad are really striving to change the narrative of what it means to be an educated Black man in society in the United States of America. And my co-founder and I combined, we have over 25 plus years of experience doing this work. So this work is not new to us. It is very much who we are. It is a part of our passion, our purpose, our life's work. This slide here just shows you just a snippet of the individuals that we work with in the colleges and universities that they are either attending, that they graduated from, and or even continued on to graduate school. So we have literally mentored individuals who have gone on to do great things at various institutions around the country. And we wanted to say, hey, let us take this to the next level. Let's make an even more intentional impact by creating this organization to do this work specifically on college campuses and impacting individuals through a cohort model. And so, of course, I always ask at the end of any presentation is, now that you have heard this, are you ready to help us transform lives? And so that's pretty much the end of the presentation. One other thing as well that I would just put out here, and we'll just kind of leave this screen up while we may be doing some Q&A or things of that nature, is ways for individuals to connect with us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and on LinkedIn. And on all of those pages, you will also be able to access our website, which is www.operationgradnfp, which is not-for-profit.org. Also, too, we do acknowledge that we are, well, I acknowledge that we are a COVID organization, meaning that we were founded at the beginning or in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we were founded on Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. And this week, we're actually celebrating our 1-year anniversary. So we've had a bunch of different events happening throughout this week that were really awesome, well attended. And so we're super excited about achieving this milestone. And on the right-hand side of the slide, the 25 hours of giving is our last event that we have for the week, which is going to be on our Founders Day. And we are challenging all of our supporters, community members, families, friends, everyone to donate on 2/5. So donated $25 on February 5th to help us reach our goal of $5,000 to be able to start our inaugural chapter at a partner college and university. So that is Operation Grad Incorporated in a nutshell. Again, I am Dr. Darryl Hylton Jr., co-founder and CEO, and I'm appreciative again for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Ooh. I have so many things going through my mind. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, I need you to send me this link with the 25 on 2/5, so I can post that on all the things. So if you can,
Sure, absolutely.
however you want that shared. But let me give the floor over to Benita.
So no, I was like you. I was like, send it out to us. It might be easier if you send it to Emily or I don't know, Gary or Angela, and then they can just send it back out to the crowd, to the masses like they normally do. They have a great email listing so that we can post it on our social media. I, for one, am happy to see, I saw Hampton University on there, so shout out to the HIU, because we're not even debating who's real. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
but
well, look, I'm a Spartan, so I'm a Norfolk State University Spartan, so.
I know. So I was gonna say shout out to the Tidewater HBCUs.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But do we have any questions from the floor? And if not, I do have a follow-up question. This is my follow-up question is this. We do know that it's always easier right now to get our students into college. Mm-hmm. Have you seen what is the biggest transition you've seen? Because I know you said you started in COVID. Mm-hmm. So have you seen a shift from the gentlemen, the men that you work with, the young men that you work with? Have you seen a shift from them saying, I'm going to shift from this college or university and go to community college right now because I just don't understand why I'm paying all of this money to be taking online classes? Have you seen that shift? And if you have or have not, do you think it's a good shift, or how would you help somebody navigate through that?
Yes, so I've seen a little bit of both. I think for specifically the incoming class of 2024, so the current freshman class, I've seen a couple of individuals who had that mindset of, why am I paying the regular cost of tuition, et cetera, to attend classes online? But I've also seen other individuals who are saying that really doesn't matter. Like, I wanted to attend XYZ school and I'm going to attend this school. I also think too, as a higher ed practitioner, that we have done a great job at finding a happy medium to still giving the students a somewhat of a normalized traditional collegiate experience while maintaining the social distancing and CDC guidelines. So while there may be some campuses that are completely online, completely virtual for the semester and or the year, there are many schools that are actually on campus, still navigating the space and doing what they can to provide an inclusive and just a holistic experience for their students. So I think it's about just finding that balance. But all the students that I've worked with and that I continuously check in at various institutions that I've worked at previously, or that I have students that I mentor at, they've been able to adjust well. Some of them actually like the online formatting. Some institutions have gone to block schedules where they would kind of like a traditional summer model where they take 2 or 3 classes in 7 weeks, and then they'll take the second half in 7 weeks. And they like that model because it allows them to focus on 2 classes at a time versus 5. So it really just depends on the institution and the student and what's going to work best for them. And for me as a mentor, I think my role specifically is just to help them to process that and provide perspective to make sure that they're able to achieve the success that they want.
I'm wondering, oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, are there certain classes that are like more conducive to a virtual environment than others? Like, for example, I'm friends with a lot of artists, and I have a friend who teaches like glass blowing online, and that's not really going to work out. But are there certain like classes you can focus on during the pandemic that are great in a virtual environment?
I would say, that could be a sticky situation, because then, some people may say, well, you're saying my class is more important than others, that it has to meet face to face. But I think obviously there are some classes that you just cannot do very effectively virtually. For example, your sciences that have labs. It's kind of hard to mix formulas, or it's kind of hard to dissect a pig virtually. I know that there are technologies that give students the experience of what it may look like, but it's not the same as being in person and actually having your hands at the scalpel to the animal or whatever the lab may be. So I definitely think that there are some courses that just make sense to be on campus. However, there may be some other courses that really allow you to thrive in the virtual space. For example, computer science. I'm sure they're having a ball being in the virtual space because this is what they do. This is how they navigate their curriculum anyway. So it really is just contingent upon the courses and what truly makes sense for the students that are studying those classes.
I want to make sure that we keep things moving, but I've got one more question for you, and then we're going to switch over to our two other guests.
Sure.
And I'll try to make this as brief as possible because it needs a little bit of context.
Okay.
I don't want to focus on STEM, but just to paint the picture, a lot of the conversation for diversifying STEM fields revolves around how do we inspire more communities of color to get into STEM fields, right? And they're thinking about diversification as a color palette. And we all know that it's a lot more complicated than that, right? Like for me as an immigrant, my parents didn't navigate the college system in the United States, right? So it's not just about inspiring, right? It's not just about mentoring. So have you seen something that is really helpful in your mentoring that brings that whole student into focus, their entire circle of support, their parents, their guardians, their aunts, their uncles, grandparents, friends, like their whole circle? How do you engage with the whole student and not just the individual?
Yes, absolutely. I would say, for one, from a STEM perspective, so I used to work in K-12 education as well. I taught 5th grade math and science. And as it relates to just kind of inspiring more communities of color to enter STEM fields and things of that nature, I think K-12 holistically has to do a better job at showing that STEM is an okay field to be engaged and to be innovative and to show that creativity. Because when you look at K-12 curriculum, the focus really is on math and English, or math and reading, language arts and things of that nature. That's where the data is really driven from. That's what the standardized testings and what teachers are deemed as effective educators is based off of is math and English. And science and history is kind of a trade-off. You may get that first and third quarter, second and fourth quarter, et cetera. So if we want to make a bigger push for communities of color to be engaged within the STEM field, we have to normalize that it's okay to be engaged with it as they're navigating throughout their educational experience. But in addition to that, I would say from the holistic standpoint and engaging the students, one big thing when you talk about community is not only just engaging the student, but engaging their family as well. Because for a lot of students who may be first generation, like you said, as an immigrant yourself, your parents didn't navigate that space. And so what I never wanted to do was to isolate my families, to isolate the parents or whomever may be their support systems, and making them feel like they don't know, so they can't be a part. The only person that can help them is me and the other staff or faculty across campus, whatever. I always try to not only just empower the student, but empower the families that you are just as much needed as any and everyone else to help this student become successful. Because at the end of the day, yes, I may have met your student as a freshman in college, but you have known them your entire life. And so who knows the student better than you? So I want you on my team. I want you to be able to provide me feedback and things that maybe, the student may be struggling with that they may not share with me offhand, or vice versa, et cetera. So I always want to make sure that I'm empowering my families to say, hey, you are just as valued, you are just as important, and helping them to create a support system within themselves. So connecting families of similar interests or of similar values and saying, hey, did you know that both of you all have students at this institution and you all come from the same area? It might be good for you all to connect. And I've been able to kind of connect families across the students that I've mentored and be able to develop some really strong relationships to support each other throughout this journey.
Yeah, I love that technique of connecting families. That's power right there. Like you create that community and that accountability because you have other people around you that are pushing you as well. I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Darryl Hylton Jr.
Awesome. Thank you.
I hope you stick around because we've got something that I think you'll be very interested in.
Awesome. Okay, I'll be here.
I just want to check in with our audience and make sure that there isn't any last questions for Dr. Hilton. And I also want to check if Shawntia Lee is in the audience. I don't see her. All right, no last minute questions there. Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Hilton. So I want to think about what we're really talking about and what's required in order for Dr. Hilton's students to be successful. They have to lean into something that's a bit uncomfortable to talk about, which is emotions and males and vulnerability. And so I want to invite in Terry Huang and Alice Gilmore to tell us a little bit about the work that they're doing in partnership with middle school boys, and yeah, and their open hand research. So we'll go ahead and take the floor, Terry and Alice.
Hey, I'll go ahead and, do you mind just letting me share screen?
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having us. We're very honored to be involved.
And before you get too far along, I'm going to take screen share partway through. So could you enable it for me as well? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so I'm Terry, and this is Alice. And unfortunately, the other two members of our team are unable to make it. One of our teammates is in Norway, so the time difference is a little bit wild. And then the other has an emergency with his dog, unfortunately. So, but we are members of a team who are in the master's program called the Integrated Product Design Program at the University of Pennsylvania. And what this program is centered around fusing the learnings from design, business, and education in order to create disruptive services or products. And I want to just run through our thesis project that we've been working on. And the way that it's focused is first really identifying a core problem and then exploring solutions to make sure that we have holistically looked at the problem and solved it correctly. So I'll just run through the initial problem framing aspect, and then Alice will run through some initial prototypes. So we began by looking a lot at the emotional well-being of our middle school age boys. And we started investigating the societal pressures that are put upon these boys. And some of these you might have heard about, such as like, don't cry, be tough, be perfect, you have a big personality, all these kind of messages. And we really wanted to look at how this affects them as they grow up and later on. So we really wanted to dig into hearing from the boys themselves and hearing their voices. Unfortunately, we were unable to secure one-on-one interviews, so we sent out a lot of surveys. And 70% of the respondents said that they felt like they should be able to hand problems on their own. And 46% said they try to hide what they're feeling. In investigating and digging a little deeper, we were curious and asked about the tools that they had in order to manage these complex emotions. And a lot never really had concrete answers. They said they either did nothing, or they laid on their bed and stared at the ceiling, or they just fidgeted. And we had one response that we felt painted a really powerful picture for the situation. And it's, my own emotions confuse me. Half the time, I'm not sure how I feel or why, except for rage and sadness. I feel those pretty well. And that's from a 14-year-old respondent that we were able to connect with. So the problem definition that we've centered around is middle school age boys are experiencing a lot of strong and complex emotions. They believe they should be able to handle problems and feelings on their own. They have few tools for effective stress and emotional regulation. And from here, as the starting point, we really started to ideate on the way to come across a solution. And I wanted to give a quick framework about the insights that we drew from this research, so you're able to, see how we came up with the prototypes that Alice is going to present. So the first one is that before boys can practice expressing their emotion, they need to see other men demonstrate vulnerability without shame. The second one is that boys are willing to express their thoughts, but they need to be asked. They won't necessarily voluntarily do so. And the third one is that effective emotional regulation is built through practice. It's not a one and done kind of situation. And to continue sharing, boys really need to feel like their thoughts and feelings are being heard. And Alice, do you want to run through our prototypes?
Yep. So I am going to quickly share 2 prototypes that we made to explore these insights further. So the first one that I'm going to share with you is this website called Open Hand. So when we were putting together these prototypes, we really think that down the line, these 2 ideas would merge into one solution. But to really understand the feedback that we get, we have decided to test different things in isolation so that we know exactly what we're learning. So this prototype specifically focuses around storytelling and explores the idea or our hypothesis that boys need to see vulnerability demonstrated before they can do it themselves. So this website asks boys to check in with themselves about how they're feeling. And then based on their response or their emotion at the time, it will connect them with the story of an adult who that shares a story about how they navigated that same emotion. And we also, connecting them with tools. So some of the stories share, book recommendations. Other stories share song recommendations, as well as like a brief little descriptor about what was going on in their life when they, found these outlets that were helpful to them. So the next prototype I would like to share really explores the idea of putting these skills into practice. So how do we create positive experiences for boys around emotional expression? And so we created this game that's intended to be played between a parent and a child. And so we're just going to walk you through a condensed version of this. So if it feels like there's small gaps, there may be, but hopefully you'll get the general gist. So the game is called Escape the Cage, and there's 2 paths, one for the parent and one for the child. So I'll walk you through the child's version first. So the premise of the game is that the child's parent is trapped in a cage and they need to help them escape. And they need to work together to get the parent free. And then it helps the kid is prompted to solve 3 mysteries to unlock the cage for their parent. So then they're asked to complete a secret mission. And that mission is to get their parent to guess a secret word, which is an emotion. And then the way that they are supposed to do that is by acting out a time where they felt angry. So now I'm going to walk you through the parent side of this. So one thing that we wanted was to ensure that the experience is positive for the child. So we start by prompting the parent with some pointers of like how to make this go well. So, practicing active listening skills, withholding judgment, maintaining eye contact, so that they're connecting through this game. And then it walks the parent through the similar premise, explaining that they're stuck in the cage and how they're going to work together to get out. And this one just explains what their child is going to do. So we are going to open the floor up for questions in just a second. But before that, we do just want to talk about ways that you could, if you're interested in this work, ways that you could support it. So this may not come as a total shock, but people aren't jumping at the opportunity to talk to us about male emotions. So we've had some trouble connecting with people on this topic. So we have been able to create one partnership with a school, but that student body tends to be pretty white and pretty affluent. And we want to make sure that we're hearing a wider variety of perspectives. So we are interested in connecting with people in a couple of ways. One, we're looking for opportunities to test our ideas with middle school boys, either with one-on-one interviews or holding design workshops. And then we would also love to connect with parents, either one-on-one or in roundtable discussions, so we can really understand from their perspective, what are they concerned about? What are they hoping to teach their sons and all of that. So specifically, we're looking to speak to middle-income public school families with sons in middle school from Black and Brown communities. And our timeline for this is between now and February 26th. So if anybody is interested in this work and would be able to help us make some of those connections, we would be very, very appreciative. But now we just love to hear your thoughts on, where we are right now and where we're going, and see what you think.
Sorry, I was looking for my mute. Thank you so much, the two of you. So first of all, we do know that you're in the master's program, and this is your, the timeline. I know y'all are like February 26th, that's like the end of the month. Their timeline is short. Remember how all of us were getting ready to graduate. I know for myself, that thesis, we were standing outside our professor's door. I was the last one to park illegally, dash up the steps. I don't think I had showered in about 3 days, y'all pray for me. And just, throw the thesis on the desk just in time. So we do all feel and understand when they're trying to, they have a strict and a tight timeline. But I am, being a middle school teacher, when they first introduced me to just even looking and going in and saying, we want to look at middle school boys' emotions, I was like, yes. I've been in education for 23 years. I've been in middle school 20 of those years, I think. And that is something that we don't see. We are always, and I'm just going to put it out there, we are always focusing on the young ladies, whether it's STEM, whether it is social emotional, whether it is behavior. And a lot of times we just kind of throw the boys in a chess club, and we throw them in wrestling or sports activity, but we never dive into, why have you been walking around for 3 weeks angry? Who do you need to go speak to? How can I help you? And I have parents that call us and say, he just, I don't know, he won't talk to me. He won't tell me what's going on. So when I saw this, even the trying to understand piece, I was intrigued by it. So do we have any questions for our two, I'm going to call you the master's program candidates, our two candidates. Get them ready for all of the questions they're going to have to answer. But is there anyone who has any advice, any questions, any connections you want to throw out? This is your opportunity to do so now.
I just want to say that I think this is a wonderful idea. I don't have a son, I have a daughter, and she's very young, but I would say that the best way to interact with her is through a video game. So I think that, I can't ask her direct questions about her feelings. A video game is a perfect way to kind of get these types of emotions expressed. So it's awesome.
I am muted. So two things. I have managed to navigate a boy through that time period. And so fully appreciate that, being able to unlock their communication at that stage is critical. And because it then translates into relationships and your ongoing relationships going on. So I think it is a critical point. So thank you for that. I'm happy, and I'll put my email address in chat if you want to reach out to me. At the Science Center, we run a middle and high school out of classroom STEM education program. And while I don't have specific contacts, I'm happy to facilitate the contact within our organization, because there may be something that you can do with their current students, or they could potentially put you in contact with some of the schools. So we have, I don't know what we have at like currently this semester, but usually 10 or 12 schools, most of them Philadelphia-based schools, where we, non-COVID, would bring the students out of the classroom to us for a couple hours a week. And so there may be some opportunity to make some introductions for you there.
Okay.
My other one bit of feedback is, I would say the part where you're explaining the directions and what needs to happen, I would try to do less text and more kind of like bullet point feedback, so that you encourage people to read it before they enter like the game playing space. So I'm not sure if you want at that level of detail, like from a feedback standpoint. It just, it felt dense for a game. And so how do you gamify that part of the experience so that, you know, is it like eye contact? Like, is it showing a visual of eye contact? And, you know, like those types of things, so that the whole experience feels gamified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
I have a question. So first and foremost, this is really, really awesome. I think it's very much connected to the work that I do, because as they get older, if these emotions and the processing are not addressed in those spaces, it makes it a lot harder when they are now an adult, and there is truly an accountability of them being on their own and on the collegiate level. So I definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm curious to know if you all have any feedback or any data or anything at this point related to one of the bullet points you shared in your presentation, which is that the boys do not share unless they're asked. Do you all have any feedback as to why? Is it different amongst different communities of boys, whether it, you know, looking at it from a racial demographic standpoint, as far as your Black and brown communities, from your traditionally white communities, are, you know, is it specific to who is not sharing? Is it just that nobody is sharing? You know, what kind of, have you come up with anything? Not to put y'all on the spot, but I'm just curious to know if you kind of found any of that information out at this point.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that that insight is part secondary research, part firsthand research. So one person in particular that we have or whose research we've relied on is Dr. Michael Reichart. So he recently published a book that is called How to Raise a Boy. And he has been working in a variety of schools. He's based in Philadelphia, but he's worked with boys from a lot of different walks of life. And that is one element that he has raised. But we also found that in the interviews that we did, that people were not particularly, or they expressed some anxiety about talking to us or interviewing. But then once we started having the conversation, it felt good to them. And that was the feedback that we got, that they hadn't thought about these things before or talked about them, but that it was a positive experience. So that's basically where that came from.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious too, whether you've thought about how you were going to get like the parents and the students to the game part of the process, like introducing them to it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are still working through that exactly, like what is the appropriate context? How would we make them aware? Our current thought right now is that if it's a parent-child game for a middle school age group, that you're going to have to go through the parent rather than through the child, because the parent would be more likely to propose playing a game than the child. That's what we have seen so far. But we're still iterating different ideas. and resolving those details. So we don't have a very clear answer, but it's definitely something that we are exploring.
Yeah, I definitely think at that stage of the game, parents are still kind of the gatekeepers, so that makes a lot of sense. It might be interesting to explore in the context, in the conversations you're having too, whether like school counselors are folks that could be potential for facilitating the conversations, like kind of if they're seeing it on, but like Benita kind of made me think of it when she was saying, she's seeing that and, could see that in her students. And, how do you get it to people who are an objective third party as opposed to the people who are personally experiencing it? Because sometimes you're almost feeling at a loss, whereas if someone else recommends it or if someone asks for it, it's easier to recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Great thought. Yeah, one thing that we toyed around with and thought about was whether we would like that it could be sort of framed as a tool that pediatricians might recommend or something like that. But and we don't have an answer for this, but sort of balancing, like, if we want to normalize male emotions, is the correct avenue to go through pediatricians? We don't really know, but kind of weighing the pros and cons of each approach.
So I want to just jump in here really quick, and I think we're dancing around a reality that needs to be talked about, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I know firsthand just how important that work is. Having been able to navigate myself out of the environment that I came from, which was immigrant, trying to navigate poverty, all that jazz. And I think that when I'm hearing both of you speak about this, I think there's questions that are not being asked, and this could be because either yourselves or your partners or the people advising you aren't reflective of the community that you're trying to connect with. And so you might have some blind spots, but I'm just thinking about what you've presented today and thinking about all the cultural barriers that would not make me want to engage in your research. I would feel like a data point and not like somebody's genuinely invested in what I'm feeling. And so I'm not just going to offer up what I'm feeling because I don't trust you. And this happens even with people that are in our immediate circle, right? So if we don't have it, so ultimately it comes down to, like, are you asking yourself the right questions? Do you have the right product? And your questions, are they the right questions? Because that says a lot. Knowing the questions says a lot about what you care about. And if they're all coming from your own lens and not from the lens of the very audience that you're trying to connect with, then you're already starting at a disadvantage. So those are the things that are kind of swimming around in my head. I don't want to be critical of the work that you're doing. I think that there's an awesome foundation that you've laid here to build on, but are you aware of your blind spots? And are there people in your circle of influence here that can help with that?
Yeah, I think that's a totally valid piece to raise. And I think that, one thing that we're thinking through internally is that even getting people on board with the idea of us taking on the topic of male emotions within our program was a real uphill battle. And so we, and getting people to, engage with us, like even people that we know, to connect, us with their son or somebody. So I think that we have been have had to be realistic of like, how much can we achieve in a 1-year project in terms of moving the dial on different issues, and which dials can we, like, it doesn't feel like we can move them all at once. So one question that we had in the beginning, that we had, you know, a lot of group discussions about, was this idea of, do we address pain or do we address privilege? So, and the thought would be pain being the people who need the help the most right now, or do we address people who have the more privilege to set trends around whether talking about male emotions is cool or, you know, not manly, or the ways that, you know, that's defined. And that was something that eventually we never really got the choice on that, because we had so few options of who we could actually connect with, that what was, you know, something that we initially thought as like one of the really important decisions around the trajectory of our project was a decision that we never really got to make ourselves, because we were reliant on who would give us a yes. So yeah, I mean, I think your critique is spot on, and it's definitely something that we are thinking about, but it also, you know, the things that we have control over are finite. And so we're just sort of trying to think, you know, like, what, we're not going to solve it all. What in this 1 year can we solve? And it will never be perfect. We will never, you know, you're right. I mean, the holes will be there in the end too. But, you know, we're just going to do the best we can with the time that we have, with the resources that we have. And it's definitely worthy of, you know, another pass by other people or us in the future. But yeah, I mean, you're right.
Well, I think that those are really important things to be aware of, and you've had to navigate the reality, so you know exactly the battles that you're having to take on, and which ones are winnable and which ones are not. And I do agree with you that, you know, I think you've laid an awesome foundation for work to be built upon. And that's, in reality, that's what all of us do. We build on the work of wise people before us, ambitious people before us. You know, our ancestors, we would build on their work. So I really love that you're introducing this conversation. There is a conversation here that needs to be had, that people like myself have shied away from, because saying we need more boys incorporating themselves or being incorporated into girls' programs so that they can learn to coexist in these different environments. And so that boys are learning that you need to be respectful in the classroom, in the workplace, in the lab, in society. And so keeping them separate, to me, feels counterintuitive. As important as girls' programs are, I think that there's a deeper conversation here that is scary as a male to introduce, right? So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely something early on. And when we proposed doing this, I mean, in our cohort, there was a lot of negative feedback of like, why are you focusing on boys? Like, why can't this be, you know, you're focusing on both? And I think this was our hypothesis. But then when we went out and spoke to mental health professionals, we also spoke to people in the gender study department at Penn, and all of that, is that because of the way that we socialize boys, products that are gender neutral tend, if they were a gender neutral product around emotion, boys would implicitly think that's not for me around that. So in order to move the dial on something that specifically targets boys, you have to be specific in your solution. So sort of like a one size fits all solution to a very specific problem isn't gonna work very well. But so how do you do that? And how do you do that in a way that doesn't, shut people off from your research? And we don't have all the answers. We are screwing up left and right, but we're just kind of like, learning from one train like one crash to like, we just do it better the next time. And
we're all stumbling through it. So, go Benita, please. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That is what research is.
Yeah.
Literally, you research and you say, okay, this didn't work this way, or we worded this incorrectly. We went to the wrong place to even start our research, back up and do it again. And we all know that. Like, I think when you come here to the round table, that's why you put it on the table.
Yeah.
And you put your research on your table, you put your business on the table, your edupreneur business, you put it on the table, because we're all here to design to disrupt. So both of you have come in from, we're in college, we're going to college, and then we went backwards. Okay, we're going to go back to even young men. And don't be afraid when someone says to you, why are you targeting this group of people? Why are you targeting this group of people? If that is where you think the need is, then that is where you work. Like, I'm not going to be mad at Tracy because she's over there at the Science Center and I'm over here at the English department. That is where she needs to be, and this is where I need to be. And eventually we're going to circle around to each other. And my creative writers are going to go into the Science Center because they need to be there, because they need that to be creative. And the Science Center kids are going to come over here and write about their experience in a creative way. So that's where we're going to leave today, is how do we bring it all together to make an entire cohesive child who turns into an amazing citizen? Because that's what let's think about where we are right now. We need amazing citizens. That's what I need. I want citizens to come out of my classroom, to come out of your program. I want men to be able to express their feelings. I want us women to give them space to do it, because sometimes we have a problem with that. And then I want us to move forward. So I think when we came today, I loved it. We had two ends of the spectrum. We have a program with young men going into college and graduate school, and it's already up and running. And then we have this program that it is your research project. That's what it is. We're not going to solve it today. And I love how Alice and Terry, and I don't know if you saw in the chat, Dr. Hilton said, you started something. Daniel said, you started something. Tracy said, you started something. And if you don't even want to pick it up again, it's okay. Somebody's going to come behind you and go, I thought about, let me look at their research that's going to be published anyway. And I'm going to go from there and move forward. So we are going to wrap up, because we start on time and end on time. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Any parting words, I do love to leave the floor open if anyone has any parting words. But if all hearts and minds are clear, please wear your mask, practice social distancing, wash your hands. And if you prefer, you want to get the vaccine, and that's what you want to do, you go do that. There are emails in the chat. Please go in and get the emails that you need. Dr. Hilton, Daniel, he is amazing when it comes to community. Science Center is always all over my Twitter. Thank you. And my Instagram. And I'm all the way in Miami, so I know what's going on in Philadelphia all the time. And thank you, Venture Cafe, for always being an amazing host and allowing us to come in and have this creative space. We are designed to disrupt the Edupreneurs Roundtable, and we will see you next month.